In the frozen wilderness of Antarctica, a team of scientists led by Darlena Hartfield began their routine excavation beneath the thick layers of ice. They were studying ancient fossils and climate change patterns when one of the junior researchers noticed something unusual buried deep in the ice, a massive structure half submerged in the cold earth. It was too smooth to be a natural formation, too precise to be a rock formation. At first, they thought it was just another geological anomaly, but as they began to dig, the outline of a ship began to emerge. It was not like anything they had ever seen before. It was sleek and metallic. Its surface glowed faintly even in the dim sunlight of the polar region, as if it had its own internal light source. The design was alien in the truest sense. The edges of the ship seemed to defy the laws of physics, sharp angles and curves that looked unnatural yet beautiful and unnerving at the same time. Dr. Hartfield had been working in the field of extraterrestrial research for over a decade, but nothing had prepared her for what she was looking at. Her team took immediate measurements and started mapping the ship's surface. No known material matched the alloys. They were detecting this wasn't just an ordinary spacecraft. This was something far older than anything they had ever imagined. The idea that this wreckage could predate humanity's existence was now undeniable. The discovery spread like wildfire across the globe. Scientists, governments, and military agencies scrambled to get a foothold in the excavation. As the first photographs of the site hit the media, debates flared over ownership and control of the alien wreckage. Nations sent teams to claim a piece of the technology before anyone else could, but Dr. Hartfield remained focused. Her team was given the task of carefully studying the ship's structure. Before any attempt was made to access its interior, they needed to understand what they were dealing with. After weeks of excavation, the team made a stunning breakthrough when they discovered a way into the wreckage. They found an entry hatch sealed by an ancient lock mechanism. But it wasn't like anything they had encountered before. It didn't require a key or code. Instead, a series of light pulses seemed to be the trigger. Dr. Hartfield and her team spent hours studying the sequence, but when they finally activated the hatch, the result was beyond their wildest expectations. A surge of energy radiated from the ship and shot into the sky. It was a burst of pure light that seemed to shimmer in the air for a moment before vanishing into the clouds above. For a brief second, it seemed as though the entire world had stopped. The air became still, as if holding its breath. The ground beneath them vibrated with an unfamiliar hum, and then it was gone as quickly as it had come. The team stood frozen, unable to comprehend the event that had just transpired, but they knew one thing for sure: the ship had responded. The energy pulse didn't just disappear into the atmosphere, it had a purpose. Something had awakened deep within the alien wreckage, and the implications were immediate. As the global network of satellites and sensors began picking up anomalous energy readings from the wreckage, and from deep within space itself, humanity's first encounter with the unknown had begun, and Earth would never be the same. The days following the strange energy pulse were filled with chaos and confusion as the world tried to make sense of what had happened in Antarctica. World governments scrambled to control the flow of information to their citizens, but it was already too late. The images of the alien wreckage had gone viral and speculation ran wild. Every media outlet was filled with theories, from alien contact to doomsday scenarios. No one had any answers, but everyone wanted one. Darlena Hartfield's team worked tirelessly to unlock the secrets of the ship's technology. They carefully studied the patterns of energy that had erupted from the wreckage, but every test and every analysis raised more questions than answers. The ship seemed to be a vast repository of ancient knowledge, far beyond human comprehension. It was like nothing they had ever seen. Its structure defied all understanding, and yet it had been waiting there for eons, buried in the ice, as if it had been waiting for humanity to find it. As the team worked in Antarctica, a growing sense of urgency spread across the globe. The energy readings from the ship's interior had triggered a series of unprecedented phenomena. Strange fluctuations in the Earth's magnetic field were detected. Unusual disturbances in the ionosphere caused widespread satellite malfunctions, and unexplained meteorological events began to occur across the world. What started as a scientific curiosity was now becoming a global crisis. Then came the first signal. It was a single burst of static that appeared on every communication channel. Without warning, it was brief and distorted, but unmistakably deliberate. The signal contained no words, no language that humanity could understand, just a series of flashing symbols that seemed to resonate with a frequency beyond human hearing. The message was too complex for any immediate decoding, yet its intent was clear. The world held its breath as the signal transmitted across every device capable of receiving it. For days, Dr. Hartfield's team was consumed with deciphering the message. Their best linguists and cryptographers were enlisted, but the signal's structure defied human logic. It wasn't a simple string of data, it was something more intricate. It took only a few days for them to realize that the signal was not meant to be decoded by language alone. It had a different purpose. The signal wasn't just transmitting information. It was a key to unlocking something far more profound within the wreckage itself. After a week of relentless analysis, the team managed to isolate a pattern of sound frequencies that seemed to correspond with the ship's energy output, and with one final step, the puzzle was solved. The signal began to translate into human language, and what it revealed sent chills down their spines. The message was a warning from a race of ancient aliens, the creators of the ship, who had long since vanished, but left this message as a beacon to warn future civilizations. Their message was clear. The Ravagers were coming. The Ravagers were a force beyond comprehension, a nomadic species that devoured entire star systems, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. The creators of the ship had once battled the Ravagers and failed to stop them. Their civilization had been destroyed by this unstoppable enemy, but before they were eradicated, they left behind their last hope, a weapon that could defeat the Ravagers, but only if someone could understand it and wield it. The signal was not just a warning, it was a plea for help and a call to arms. The Ravagers were heading for Earth, and humanity was now the last line of defense against their annihilation. The weight of the message hit Dr. Hartfield like a thunderclap. She knew that the wreckage held the key to humanity's survival, but unlocking it would come at a price, and time was running out. The Ravagers were on their way. The truth was out there now, and it was far worse than anyone had imagined. The Ravagers, an unstoppable force of destruction, were coming to Earth. The message from the alien race that had created the ship in Antarctica had sent shockwaves through the world, but the true weight of their words hadn't fully sunk in yet. For the first time in history, humanity was facing an existential threat. And it wasn't from within. It was from the stars themselves. Dr. Lena Hartfield's team worked around the clock to understand the full implications of the warning. The alien technology inside the wreckage was both fascinating and terrifying, a combination of advanced machinery and organic components that blended seamlessly together. The ship itself was not merely a vessel, but a living entity, its systems interconnected in ways that made it feel almost sentient. As Hartfield and her team dug deeper into the wreckage, they realized that the ship's purpose wasn't just to travel between stars. It was designed to destroy. Inside the ship, they discovered a series of ancient control rooms, filled with alien interfaces and technology beyond their wildest dreams. Yet it was all dormant, locked away, awaiting the right moment to be unlocked. The longer the team studied it, the more they realized that the ship was far more than a weapon. It was a fortress, an arsenal capable of wiping out entire civilizations with a single catastrophic strike. But the true key to its power was still hidden within the ship's core. Then came the breakthrough. Deep within the heart of the ship, Dr. Hartfield's team discovered a chamber that appeared to be a control room of sorts, far more complex than anything they had encountered before. It was lined with holographic interfaces that flickered to life as soon as they entered. A strange energy pulsed through the air, making the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. As they connected their equipment to the systems, the ship seemed to react as if it recognized their presence. The air around them crackled with the raw power of ancient technology. Through a combination of instinct and analysis, Dr. Hartfield activated the chamber's main console. The walls shifted, and a holographic projection appeared in the center of the room. It was the same alien eye that had sent the initial warning, but this time it was clearer, more coherent. It spoke directly to them in perfect English. "You have awoken the last hope of my people," it said, its voice both haunting and regal. "We fought the Ravagers once, and we failed. But now you must take up our cause. The weapon you seek is not just for defense. It is the key to your survival. You must use it, or you will perish." The projection faded, and the team was left in stunned silence. The alien race had designed the ship to hold the weapon capable of destroying the Ravagers, but it was no ordinary weapon. It was a fusion cannon of unimaginable power, capable of eradicating entire fleets. But even with this knowledge, the ship's systems were not fully operational. Something was missing. Something vital. As Dr. Hartfield began working with her team to power up the weapon, they encountered a problem. The fusion cannon required an immense amount of energy to function, far more than the ship's systems could supply on their own. The team realized that to activate the weapon, they would need to harness the Earth's energy grid itself, a task that would take time, resources, and global cooperation. Meanwhile, strange things began happening around the world. Energy anomalies were increasing, and with each passing day, the Ravagers' presence grew more apparent. Massive energy spikes began appearing in space, signaling their approach. Satellites were tracking the movement of their fleet, and Earth's government scrambled to prepare for an invasion that seemed inevitable. But no one knew how long they had left. Dr. Hartfield understood now more than ever that the weapon was their only hope. The Earth was on the brink of annihilation, and the only thing standing between humanity and total destruction was the ship beneath the ice. But time was running out, and the Ravagers were closing in faster than anyone could anticipate. The countdown had begun. As the Ravagers' fleet grew closer to Earth, panic spread across the globe. Reports of their approach came in waves. Massive, incomprehensible ships closing in on the solar system, leaving devastation in their wake. The world's governments tried to coordinate a unified response, but the reality was grim. Nothing humanity possessed could even scratch the surface of the Ravager fleet. The alien forces were far more advanced than anything Earth had ever known, and the weaponized technologies humanity had developed in its short history seemed like toys in comparison. Meanwhile, Dr. Hartfield's team worked feverishly in Antarctica, pouring every ounce of effort into unlocking the final secrets of the alien ship. They had uncovered the fusion cannon's design, but now they faced a massive challenge: powering the weapon. The alien ship's systems were intricately connected, but they could not function independently. To activate the weapon, they needed an energy source far more powerful than any existing human technology could provide. After extensive calculations, Dr. Hartfield's team realized that Earth's own energy grid, the vast network of power plants, grids, and reactors, was their only option. The problem was twofold. Activating the fusion cannon would require harnessing the combined energy of the entire planet, which would take a coordinated effort from all the world's major powers. Furthermore, the process of tapping into Earth's energy grid would create a massive visible spike of energy, something that would not go unnoticed by the Ravagers. Dr. Hartfield knew the risk. The moment they activated the weapon, they would be marking Earth's location for the Ravagers, and with their fleet so close, there was no telling what kind of retaliation they would face. Still, there was no choice. The fusion cannon was their only hope. As the weeks passed, global leaders convened in secret, forming an uneasy alliance to share resources and technology. The UN passed emergency resolutions, and a vast operation was set into motion, with engineers and military experts from all over the world working together to integrate their power grids with the alien technology. But with each passing day, the threat loomed larger. The Ravagers were advancing, and Earth's defenses were crumbling. Then the first strike came. At first, it was subtle. Satellites began to flicker and go dark. Communications between countries were disrupted, and strange electromagnetic disturbances crippled global infrastructure. The first wave of Ravager ships had arrived in Earth's orbit, and they were already testing Earth's defenses. Missiles were launched, Satellites disintegrated, and a blinding energy pulse from the Ravager flagship struck a small military base in the Pacific, obliterating it in an instant. It was a clear message to humanity: surrender or face total annihilation. The Ravagers' weapons were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Energy beams that bent space itself, cloaking devices that made their ships invisible to radar, and shields that rendered Earth's missiles useless. The human military launched counterattacks, but they were nothing more than futile gestures in the face of such overwhelming power. The Ravagers were here to conquer, and they had no intention of negotiating. Back in Antarctica, Dr. Hartfield and her team were racing against time. The fusion cannon, still dormant within the alien ship, was their only chance to survive. But as Earth's defenses fell apart, it became clear that activating the weapon was a dangerous gambit. The energy required to power it up could overload the ship's systems and tear it apart. Yet they had no other option. If the fusion cannon failed, humanity would face total extinction. A global broadcast was held, a final rallying cry to Earth's people. World leaders and military commanders announced a coordinated effort to unleash the fusion cannon's power, pledging to unite their forces for one last stand against the Ravagers. The world held its breath as the countdown began. Dr. Hartfield's team was in the final stages of activating the ship's power systems, but the Ravagers were closing in faster than expected. In a desperate attempt to buy more time, Earth's military launched a final series of attacks, only to have them utterly obliterated by the Ravager flagship's weapons. With Earth's fate hanging in the balance, Dr. Hartfield turned to her team. Knowing that there was no more room for error, the fusion cannon had to be activated now, or humanity would face its annihilation at the hands of the Ravagers. The countdown was down to minutes, and the world was watching, waiting for the moment when Earth's greatest weapon would either save them or doom them all. As the final seconds ticked away, the fusion cannon hummed to life. The hum of the fusion cannon reverberated through the cold air of Antarctica, a low, almost primal sound that seemed to shake the very ground beneath Dr. Hartfield and her team. For the first time in days, there was a glimmer of hope, but it came with an undeniable weight. The weapon was active, and the world's survival rested in the hands of one person. Captain Lucas Trent stood at the edge of the control room, looking down at the sleek alien interface that now pulsed with energy, his heart racing. He was the one who would have to wield the weapon, the only one who could interface with the ship's neural network. Trent had always been a soldier, a man of action, and for years he had been at the forefront of humanity's battles. But he had never faced something like this. The alien ship, with its unimaginable power, was not something that could be controlled with simple military tactics or raw strength. It was an extension of the ship itself, a living, breathing organism linked to its ancient creators. To activate the fusion cannon, Trent would have to connect with the ship on a level beyond anything humanly possible. The procedure was unlike anything they had ever attempted. The ship's systems were designed to link with a human mind, but no one knew exactly how the interface would affect a person's psyche. Dr. Hartfield had spent countless hours reviewing the data, but there were still too many unknowns. The alien technology was far beyond Earth's understanding, and the risk was enormous. No one had ever survived interfacing with a system like this before, and the procedure was as much a test of mind as it was of body. Captain Trent had no illusions about the danger. He knew the odds of success were slim, but he also knew that he was the only one who could do it. His military background had prepared him for combat, but this was something different. It wasn't just about strategy or firepower. It was about survival and humanity's last chance at salvation. As Trent approached the alien control chair, the ship's interface glowed brighter, responding to his presence. The room seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, as though the ship itself was aware of him. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. Behind him, Dr. Hartfield and the rest of the team stood in silence, watching. "You don't have to do this," Dr. Hartfield said quietly, her voice tinged with a mix of fear and admiration. There has to be another way. Trent looked back at her, his expression hardening. There is no other way, Lena. If I don't do this, Earth is finished. We all are. He sat down in the chair, and the ship's systems immediately began to respond, sending waves of energy through his body. His mind began to reel as the neural interface made contact. It was a sensation like no other. His consciousness seemed to blur, merging with the ship itself. He saw flashes of alien landscapes, distant stars, and ancient civilizations that had long since disappeared. He felt the weight of the knowledge that the alien race had once carried, the burden of their defeat at the hands of the Ravagers. The interface was overwhelming. Images, memories, and sensations surged through Trent's mind faster than he could process them. His own fears, doubts, and regrets bubbled to the surface, each one threatening to consume him. The ship's eye whispered to him, its voice a mix of ancient wisdom and cold calculation. It spoke of the Ravagers, their ruthless, unstoppable force, and the weapon Trent was now connected to. The fusion cannon was more than just a weapon. It was a test, a trial that would require every ounce of his strength to control. But as the ship's systems continued to link with his mind, Trent felt something else. It wasn't just the alien intelligence that he was connecting with. It was something deeper, something more human. He could feel the collective will of humanity surging through him. The weight of all the lives at stake. The desperate hope of every person on Earth who was watching him now. For the first time, Trent realized that this wasn't just about him. It was about all of them. The future of humanity rested on his shoulders, but it wasn't just his fight. He clenched his fists, focusing every part of his being on the fusion cannon. The alien technology seemed to recognize his determination, and slowly, the chaotic flood of images and thoughts began to subside. He could feel the power of the weapon coursing through him, the raw, untamed force of the fusion cannon ready to unleash destruction. But it wasn't just about destruction, it was about hope. And with that, Captain Trent made his decision. He was ready. As the countdown began, the final phase of the procedure started. The world was watching, and Trent knew that the weapon would soon be in his hands. There was no turning back now. The countdown echoed through the control room, a ticking reminder of how little time humanity had left. Captain Lucas Trent, now fully connected to the alien ship's neural interface, could feel the power of the fusion cannon building within him. Every molecule in his body seemed to hum with energy, as if the very fabric of space itself was bending to his will. The alien technology had accepted him, but at a cost. His mind, now fused with the ship's, was being pushed to its limits, threatened by the raw, untamed power that surged through the interface. Yet in that moment, he understood. This was the only chance Earth had. Outside, the Ravagers were preparing for their final assault. Their ships hovered ominously over Earth's cities, cloaked in an impenetrable energy field. Military leaders had given their final orders, and Earth's forces were already mobilizing for the last stand. What remained of humanity's armies had been rallied, and the skies were filled with a cacophony of fighter jets, anti-aircraft fire, and missile launches. Yet all of it felt hopeless, as if the very air itself was charged with an impending sense of doom. Back at the alien ship in Antarctica, Dr. Hartfield and the rest of the team monitored Trent's progress. They could see the strain in his face as he fought to maintain control of the ship's systems. He had become something more than human, something beyond a soldier. His mind had become a conduit for the ship's will, and the weight of the decision pressed on him more than he could ever have imagined. "Captain, you're almost there." Dr. Hartfield's voice crackled through his earpiece, her tone both encouraging and desperate. "You just need to focus. The cannon is ready, but the connection—" "I know, Lena. I can feel it," Trent replied, his voice strained but resolute. "The Ravagers are close. Too close. If I lose control of this, it's over for everyone." The fusion cannon was now fully powered up, its immense energy resonating with the ship's core. Trent could feel the weapon pulsing, ready to unleash its fury. But there was a catch. The ship's AI had warned him. The weapon wasn't just about destruction, it was a gamble. To use it, he had to release an energy burst so massive, so concentrated, that it could either obliterate the Ravagers or tear Earth apart. The power needed to break the Ravagers' shields would be astronomical, but any miscalculation could destroy the ship and the planet in the process. Outside, the Ravager fleet had begun its descent, breaking through Earth's atmosphere. Their ships, grotesque and incomprehensible, appeared like dark shadows against the blue sky. Hundreds, maybe thousands of these monstrous vessels, all brimming with technology far beyond humanity's reach, descended upon Earth like an unstoppable tide. The sight was enough to make even the bravest hearts quiver with fear. But there was no time for fear. With the enemy closing in, Trent steeled himself, focusing all his will on the fusion cannon. The ship's neural interface flared with intensity, sending torrents of alien energy through his body. His mind threatened to fracture under the strain, but he pushed through. The cannon began to hum with a low, almost primal growl, as if it were alive and eager to unleash its power. Initiating the strike now, Trent whispered to himself, his voice barely audible. He had to trust the ship, trust the weapon, and trust himself. With one final push, he tapped into the weapon's core, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. A massive energy pulse shot out from the alien ship, illuminating the darkened sky above Antarctica. The pulse sliced through space like a jagged, fiery beam, streaking toward the Ravager fleet. As the pulse expanded, it tore apart the first layer of the Ravager's shield, causing their ships to flicker and lose their cloaking abilities. A second pulse followed, this one more concentrated, and it struck with devastating precision. Explosions erupted across the Ravager fleet, their ships disintegrating in flashes of blue and orange light. But the pulse did not stop there. It continued, carving through the heart of their fleet. It was as if the weapon had unlocked an ancient power within the ship, a power that was far beyond what anyone could have imagined. The Ravager's ships began to fall one by one, their energy shields crumbling under the weight of the fusion cannon's might. But then, something unexpected happened. The remaining Ravager ships began to regroup. They weren't retreating. They were adapting. A massive, central vessel, the flagship, emerged from the chaos, its dark hull shimmering with energy. The flagship was far larger than any of the other ships, its design both terrifying and awe-inspiring. And as it began to charge up its weapons, Trent realized with chilling clarity that this was their final counterattack. The Ravagers were not going to give up so easily. The battle had only just begun. The Ravager flagship loomed like a dark monolith against the backdrop of Earth's atmosphere. It was massive, its design a nightmare of jagged edges and incomprehensible geometry, pulsing with a malevolent energy that seemed to warp space around it. Unlike the smaller Ravager vessels that had been shattered by the fusion cannon, this flagship was not merely a ship. It was a force of nature, a weapon of unimaginable power. And now, it was charging up for Earth's final obliteration. Captain Trent, still connected to the alien ship in Antarctica, could feel the Ravager flagship's energy surge through the neural interface. His entire body trembled with the strain of maintaining control over the fusion cannon. But the pulse had done its work. More than half of the Ravager fleet had been decimated. The remaining ships were retreating, and the flagship was now the only thing standing between humanity and survival. But that was not enough. Trent knew that even this powerful weapon might not be enough to stop the flagship's retaliation. "Lena," Trent's voice broke through the comms, each word heavy with strain. "I don't know how long I can hold this. The flagship is powering up its weapon systems. If we don't strike it down now, Earth's gone." Dr. Hartfield's voice was steady, but there was a flicker of fear in it. "We're with you, Lucas. The world's watching. You have to finish this. You have to destroy that flagship." The interface was now pulsing in time with Trent's heartbeat, the ship's systems synchronized with his thoughts. The fusion cannon's energy was nearly at its peak, but Trent could sense something else too. The ship, The ancient alien technology was responding to him, pushing back. It was more than a weapon. It was a living entity, and he was its chosen conduit. His mind was stretched beyond human limits, but it was the only way to wield the full power of the cannon. On Earth's surface, chaos reigned. Global communications were down, governments in panic, military leaders issuing final orders, desperate to stop the oncoming disaster. The skies darkened as the Ravager flagship's weapons began to charge, a terrifying violet glow enveloping it. Humanity's last line of defense. The alien ship was all that stood between the Earth and total destruction. As the flagship's weapon gathered power, a strange realization settled over Trent. The fusion cannon, though powerful, was not designed to be wielded by anyone, not even an individual like him. It was meant to be controlled by a collective force, a species with a greater understanding of its power. Trent was just a man, but now he was more. His mind was merging with the ship, its ancient consciousness guiding him, pushing him beyond his limits. "Do it, Trent," Dr. Hartfield urged, her voice cutting through the fog of his thoughts. Now, before it's too late. Trent's pulse quickened. He focused on the Ravager flagship, the massive vessel now charging up to fire a beam powerful enough to wipe out entire continents. He locked onto the target, feeling the power of the fusion cannon surge through him, a violent torrent of energy threatening to tear him apart. With everything he had left, he forced his mind to center, his will becoming one with the ship. The fusion cannon roared to life once again, a deafening, earth-shattering sound that shook the very foundation of Antarctica. The beam, a brilliant fiery stream of pure energy, tore through the atmosphere at the speed of light. The flagship's weapon fired in response, a blinding violet pulse aimed directly at Earth's surface. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Trent's heart raced as the two beams collided. The explosion of energy was so immense that it could be seen from space, a brilliant flash of light that engulfed the flagship, sending shockwaves through the atmosphere. The Earth trembled as the force of the impact resonated through the planet. For a few seconds, it seemed like the Ravager flagship might hold its ground. Then, the flagship's shields began to flicker, then crack, as the fusion cannon's energy coursed through the ship's defenses, overwhelming them. The flagship's massive hull began to break apart, its weapon systems failing one by one. The Ravagers had underestimated humanity and the ancient alien technology that had come to Earth's aid. But the fight wasn't over yet. As the flagship's hull splintered and burned, the remaining Ravager ships, now leaderless, began to flee, desperately trying to escape the wrath of the fusion cannon. But their retreat would be in vain. The ship's systems, now fully integrated with Trent's mind, were beginning to process the Ravagers' movements, calculating their escape routes. "We've won," Trent breathed, the weight of exhaustion heavy in his voice. But Dr. Hartfield's voice was not filled with relief. "Not yet. There are more ships out there. They won't give up so easily." Trent knew she was right. This wasn't over. The Ravagers were defeated, but the war for Earth had only just begun. The galaxy was vast, and the Ravagers were just one of many threats humanity would have to face. Trent, connected to the ship and its ancient power, realized that this was just the beginning of a much larger journey. The future of humanity, and the galaxy itself, rested on their ability to wield this power. The fusion cannon's pulse had struck the Ravagers down, but now, the real battle for the stars was about to unfold. The skies above Antarctica cleared, but the tension in the air was thick. Captain Trent, still connected to the alien ship, felt a strange calm after the storm. The Ravager flagship, once a massive, unstoppable force, was now nothing more than a cloud of debris, drifting through the cold vacuum of space. The surviving Ravager vessels had scattered, retreating back into the dark reaches of the galaxy. The immediate threat had passed, but humanity's victory was bittersweet. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Back on Earth, Dr. Hartfield and the rest of the team gathered around their monitors, watching the final moments of the Ravagers' retreat. A quiet hum of relief settled over the control room. It was a fleeting peace. The world had been saved. But the damage done, the lives lost, and the realization that Earth was no longer isolated in the galaxy weighed heavily on everyone. The Ravagers had been the first invasion force to reach Earth, but they wouldn't be the last. "Captain, you did it." Dr. Hartfield's voice crackled through the comms, but there was no joy in it, only the somber weight of their survival. Trent, still in the chair, his body trembling from the intense strain of the interface, looked at the now silent systems. The ship had ceased its pulsing, the fusion cannon's power dissipating. But as the energy drained from the ship, the immense alien structure around him seemed to shift, almost as if it were alive. Trent's mind was still tethered to it, the remnants of the connection lingering in the depths of his consciousness. "The Ravagers are gone for now," Trent replied, his voice hoarse. "But they'll come back. This ship, this weapon, we've only scratched the surface of what's out there." The words hit everyone like a hammer. Humanity's victory was not just a victory against a single invader. It was a battle in an ongoing war, one that had only just begun. Earth was no longer the isolated, fragile planet it once was. The fusion cannon, now fully activated and controlled, had opened a door to the stars. The Ravagers had been the first. There would be others, each more dangerous and more relentless. "Should we activate the ship's systems again?" Dr. Hartfield asked, her voice thick with uncertainty. "We can try to learn more, expand our defenses, prepare for what's to come." Trent sat back in the chair, his body still racked with exhaustion. The interface had taken its toll. The mental and physical strain had nearly broken him, and he could feel the remnants of alien energy swirling within him. But there was something more, something that spoke to him, not just as a soldier or a survivor, but as a human being who had glimpsed the vastness of the universe and the dangers that awaited. "No," Trent replied, his voice growing steadier. "Not yet. We need time. The fusion cannon is a weapon of unimaginable power, but it's too dangerous for us to wield recklessly. We need to learn, slowly, carefully. The ship may be our salvation, but it's also a threat. We can't rush this." Dr. Hartfield nodded solemnly. "You're right. We need to understand it, not just use it." As the days passed, the world began to recover from the attack. The damaged cities were rebuilt, communication networks restored, and the global community began to heal. But the shadows of the Ravagers' invasion hung over the planet like a dark cloud. Earth had survived, but the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe now weighed heavily on humanity. In the coming months, the nations of Earth would unite, not just to rebuild, but to prepare for what lay ahead. The alien ship, now secured in Antarctica, would be studied in secret by the best minds on Earth. Trent, though a hero, became a figure in the shadows, forever connected to the ship and its ancient technology. As humanity adjusted to its new place in the galactic community, they realized that their survival did not hinge on the technology alone, but on their unity and resolve. One thing became clear. Earth had been given a second chance, a new beginning. The fusion cannon had stopped the Ravagers, but it was the spirit of humanity, their ability to adapt, to fight back against impossible odds, that would be the true weapon in the battles to come. And so, as the stars flickered above, humanity prepared for a future that was uncertain but full of potential. The galaxy was vast, and Earth had only just begun its journey. But they would not face it alone.